I think we'll get started. So just to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded. So thank you to everyone for joining. I am Wesley Bell. I'm the Conservation Policy Analyst with the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society's Northern Alberta chapter. CPAW's Northern Alberta respectfully acknowledges that our office and team are primarily based on lands referred to as Amesquatsi-Waskagan by the Nehio, also known as Edmonton. These lands are located on Treaty 6 territory and Otepemsuwak Métis governments, Fort Edmonton and Edmonton Whitemud Métis districts 9 and 10, formerly known as Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. Our work also takes place on Treaty 7, 8, and 10 lands. These lands are the traditional gathering places for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Nehio, Ngāti Métis, Nakota, Dene, and Nakawe. We thank the traditional and current stewards of these lands, waters, and resources for that stewardship and the partnerships and their leadership that continue to shape our work. So this webinar is the latest in a series that the CPAW's Northern and Southern Alberta chapters have hosted over the past year or so, in which we've tried to focus on the intersection between various environmental concerns and forestry in Alberta. The recordings of these are hosted on both of our YouTube channels. So that's the CPAW's Northern Alberta and CPAW's Southern Alberta channels. So if you're interested in more wildfire and forestry related content, how forestry practices can impact caribou or hydrology, then please go check those out. For today's presentation, we are talking about wildfire again, but with more of a focus on potential solutions to ultimately reducing wildfire risk. The global urgency of increasingly damaging wildfires, combined with the energy insecurity faced by off-grid and especially Indigenous communities, demands proactive and integrated solutions. So today we explore one such solution that aims to tackle how Canada's most vulnerable communities address fire risk and energy needs simultaneously. Our presenter is Dr. Nicolas Mansuy, a researcher at the Northern Forestry Centre within the Canadian Forest Service of Natural Resources Canada. He works at the crossroads of forest bioeconomy, sustainable resource management, and climate strategy, and his interest lies in designing and leading interdisciplinary research initiatives that deliver measurable economic, environmental, and social value, particularly in resource-intensive landscapes. So we are hoping to leave plenty of time for questions and discussions after Dr. Mansuy's presentation. So please make sure you drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to all of them. And as we said earlier, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. So again, questions in the Q&A, and please upvote those people's questions to get them to the top of the list. Okay, I've gone on for long enough, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Nicolas Mansuy.
Hello everyone. Thanks, Wesley, for the intro. Really pleased to be here today and to talk a little bit about this project. I think it's a very relevant project, considering the impact of climate change and fire in the north. So it's a very complex topic as well, because this project is really on the interface of climate change mitigation, energy security, Indigenous leadership, and so on. So I try my best to summarize all this in this presentation, but obviously we need more time to address all the challenges and potential solutions. So I'm going to start to share my screen now and start the presentation. Okay. Can you see my screen?
We see. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, again, so I think it's really important to understand, the full the broader picture of this very specific presentation, because it's, like I said, it's very complex, a lot of moving parts. a lot of overlapping topic. And so I'll take a step back and give you more information about first, what is bioenergy? I think it's really important to understand why we're doing that. Also discuss about the concept of remote and off-grid communities. I think it's a very specific to Canada. Of course, discuss about the data methodology that we use in this study and result and next step. So to understand the presentation today, it's, we have to look at the bigger picture, like I said, and this presentation is really part of a large project called Bioenergy in the North, or basically we wanted to evaluate and assess the role of bioenergy for energy security in the North. So today we focus on fire, but part of this bigger project, we look at GHG mitigation. I think it's really important to see the opportunity for bioenergy to reduce GHG emission in this community. Socioeconomic opportunities, very, very critical to, to align a clean energy transition with socioeconomic development. Like I said, support resilience to climate change. We all know that the North is facing a drastic challenge in terms of climate change. Fire is just one of them, permafrost, or change in forest dynamic, and so on. We want to also assure that we develop sustainable and local biomass supply chain. I think is very important for bioenergy to, to be transparent about the impact on the ecosystem and the impact on supply chain. We want also to look at how to integrate bioenergy with other land uses and landscape dynamic, especially in the context of indigenous communities. So it's really important to address the other needs and priorities in the landscape. And again, indigenous energy security and sovereignty is really, really the end goal of everything we're doing here. So today, again, we're going to focus on remote and off-grid community, impact of climate change in the North, and the resilience of local biomass supply chain. So, but first, what is bioenergy? So normally when I do this presentation, I do not talk about bioenergy because everybody is aware of what is bioenergy, but I think it's really important to, again, to look at that. So bioenergy is one of type of renewable energy derived in that situation from biomass or organic material. So obviously here we're going to talk about forests and wood, but we can also use agricultural residues. We can also use algae, for example, or any other type of organic waste. And once we can use this biomass, we can produce heat, electricity, or fuels like biogas, biofuel. And bioenergy is mostly considered renewable when we can make sure that the biomass is sustainably produced and managed. And we have that kind of practice in Canada. So bioenergy in Canada is really sustainable with a lot of benefit, co-benefit. And of course, bioenergy can reduce fossil fuels and lower GHG emissions. So in this very specific context of indigenous and remote community, the idea is really to get rid of diesel and to use biomass instead. And just for your information, biomass is widely used at the global level. So actually, bioenergy is the largest share of renewable energy globally with 55%. And in Canada is not that high. It's only 27% of Canada of renewable energy supplies because we have hydro mostly. So it's another type of renewable. In practice, bioenergy in Canada, it's could have different form, but just to give you an example here with this very nice example in Ontario, the Atikogan Power Station. It's a very, very good illustration of what we can do in terms of bioenergy. So it's located in Ontario, north of Thunder Bay. And this bioenergy plant was retrofitted from a coal plant already 10 years ago. So, and this bioplant is using 100% of forest residues, forest biomass. It's the largest in Canada. So you can see here in the top right corner, you can see the silo where we store a pallet They're huge. It's quite huge facility here that we have in Ontario. So I think each silo can store 5,000 tons of wood pellets. And this is quite effective because the whole system can produce 160, 100 gigawatt per hour. So just for your information, you can supply energy, you can create electricity for a lot of homes, as you can see here, 70,000 homes in Northern Ontario, because this facility is connected to the grid. So basically here again, in terms of how this works, you have, this is actually the plan before the facility was changed to the biomass unit, but you have a log yard or a biomass is stored, and then this is bring into the boiler house where you boil, where you cook, you burn the biomass to create steam. So the very, very high temperature. With the steam, you direct that toward the turbine, and then the turbine creates energy. And like I said, this pellet plant is connected to the grid. So after that, you can produce and supply energy to the homes. So it's quite big units, like I said. And in terms of jobs, I think it's really important always to link bioenergy with socioeconomic development. This facility employ almost 100 people just inside the facility, but also another 100 outside in terms of developing and managing the biomass supply chain. So this is what we call a commercial scale pellet plant. Obviously, in the context of remote community, the context is a little bit different because this is not, the capacity will be a little bit different, a little bit lower, obviously. So, but first, let's see what's community, remote community or grid community looks like in Canada. So we have close to 200 off-grid communities in Canada for a total of 200,000 people. And most of these people are Indigenous. So that's why sometimes we say Indigenous community. And they're off-grid. So what that means? That means that they are not connected to the North American grid. So they use local energy system. And most of the time, like 75%, they're using diesel. And this is not good because we're talking about very inefficient energy system, aging infrastructure that are not efficient, and they produce a lot of GHG, and they're also using a lot of GHG, a lot of diesel actually. So roughly for all the community, they are consuming 700 million liters of diesel per year. So the impact on the environment is really, really bad. Of course, GHG emissions are very, very high. So if we compare that to the people living in the South, and like average Canadian house, in terms of comparison, is 3 times the average GHG emission for the same amount of electricity energy produced. And at the same time, they're very remote. So most of this community, they are not connected by road. So it's what we call a fly out community. So this creates a lot of challenges in terms of bringing energy, in terms of bringing also biomass, because it's very expensive. The logistic is complex. So it's again, this is all the challenge that are overlapping here. And because of the reliance on diesel, also the energy cost is really, really high. So this community often pay 2 to 6 times more for the energy, even with subsidized. So the situation is really challenging, and all of this together, the impact on the environment, the impact on the energy cost, makes the socioeconomic development really difficult. And of course, all this impact the well-being of these people living in this condition. I didn't mention that, but because they're a very small community, the energy demand is also relatively low, which is perfect to develop a local bioenergy system. So because of this situation, the government of Canada realized the opportunity to invest into clean energy transition, but also for their federal commitment. like reconciliation, obviously, with Indigenous people, also using this to reach our climate objective, climate leadership, like the net zero strategy by 2050, but also, like I said, make sure that the clean energy transition help toward socioeconomic development. So over the last few years, we have a different project, different federal project, providing a budget to invest into bioenergy, but also in other renewable like solar or wind. But today, obviously, we're going to focus just on bioenergy. And over the last 5 years, the government of Canada invested over 300 million. And to date, we have 50 projects going on to develop bioenergy across Canada. So because of all this investment, but also the research that we are doing across the government of Canada, we learned a lot of what bioenergy can do into this project, to this community, but also about the barriers. It's not easy to develop bioenergy in the north, so we have to be honest with that. But at the same time, we know the benefit. So in terms of cost benefit, we know that bioenergy can really, really make a difference if we compare to fossil fuels. So here you have some information about the price of energy versus fossil fuels, wood pellets, heating oil, and so on. So bioenergy can be really, really effective to reduce energy bill in this community. We also know that bioenergy can help to reduce GHG emissions. Because when you invest into bioenergies, and obviously you can offset all the emission coming from GHG emissions. But it's also important to say also that bioenergy is not carbon neutral, but we don't have much time to talk about that today because the focus is really on fire. But we have published a couple of papers just to be very, very clear about in which conditions bioenergy can be very, very efficient. But the most important challenge and barriers towards bioenergy in the north is what we call the supply chain, because a lot of the biomass, and let's say 100% of the biomass currently is coming from the south. So here in this map, you see that, for example, this is just one illustration from one of our projects with Fort McPherson, and you can see that Fort McPherson is really in the Arctic, really up north. So again, in that situation, the pellet or biomass will come from like right here in Alberta. So this is almost 4,000 kilometers to supply the pellet from this pellet plant to Fort McPherson. So you can imagine the cost of doing that and the logistic problem. So we need to invest more into local biomass supply chain. That's really critical if we want to really get most of the bioenergy development. And again, because this community don't have much infrastructure, we need to invest into local infrastructure. And when the community importing pellet from very far away, then that doesn't help to develop local infrastructure. Other thing that we learn is that community leadership is really, really important. And again, one way to do that is to develop local infrastructure, local training, and local knowledge. So by doing all that, by using local biomass versus imported pellet, then we can do all that. So now more about fire. So again, it's really important to understand that this community, they're facing energy and security, but they're also really exposed to the impact of climate change, especially fires. So here you can see the communities that we use in our project, and the red patch is actually the burn area. So almost all of this community, especially the one that were within the forest, are exposed to high fire risk. And yeah, in addition to that, they don't have the infrastructure to manage fire risk in terms of emergency planning, in terms of security infrastructure. They no roads, so in terms of evacuations, is really again, it's really bad. Climate change has major impact, and more we realize that even in the Arctic, forest can burn. So a lot of people, seem that there is no forest in the north, in the Arctic, but that's not true. As we learned from the 23 fire season. So I know you had a presentation on fire, I think not long ago, but just here to refresh your memory about the fire season, it was terrible. So the record-breaking 23 fire season, 6,000 fires. As you can see, almost 18 millions of hectares of land burned. It's really, really different from the annual average. 29 mega fires, and a lot of these fires were actually in the north. All the evacuees that you can see here, hundreds of thousands of evacuees were actually coming from all these communities. And carbon emission. So that's something we understand more and more, the impact on carbon emission, on health, on air quality. So again, here is a very interesting statistic. If the 2023 fire season was the country, it will be the fourth emitters in 2023 after China, USA, and India. So again, a lot of this impact need to be mitigated. So that's why here we try to combine fire mitigation and bioenergy. So basically, the idea of bioenergy is to change from fire risks to fire smart. So what does that mean? So you're probably aware of this program, Fire Smart Canada, that tried to mitigate fire risk around the community or around infrastructure, more or less, because we have this program provide, I think, 7 principles, and one of them is fire vegetation management. So we can do thinning, we can do prescribed burn, we can do a change in the type of fuels. We can do a lot of things to reduce fire risk around the community and infrastructure. But the reality of that is that all this biomass that can come from fuel treatment, vegetation management, it's still a liability for the community. So based on discussion that we had with Forest Mat Canada, a lot of communities and a lot of private landowner, they basically, they're not, they're very hesitant to invest in this in fire smart practices because basically they don't know what to do with all this biomass. So that's the reality. The other reality of fuel treatment is that it's expensive. So here we're talking, depending on the type of treatment, of course, the scale, the superficie that we want to prescribe, between 3,000 and 10,000. Here it's in euro, but you can also set out in Canadian dollars. So it's quite expensive. So the question here is, can we find a solution to do something with all this biomass that will come from fuel treatment? And that's the whole idea with this project for the specific context of Indigenous community. So here I'm going to talk about the data that we did for this specific study. And again, it's a national study. So the results are quite broad. And we look at all the Indigenous and remote communities. So like I said, in the database, we have the database, I think we have 200 communities at this point. And so we wanted to see a trend. Basically, the question that we wanted to answer is, do we have enough biomass at risk of fire around this community that can be used for the bioenergy? So we combine a different data set, like national data set, so mostly coming from remote sensing, like above ground biomass. We also used what we call the wildland human interface. And very important, this information combine, where the build or infrastructure and the vegetation met together. So this is where we have the most start of fire actually. We also combine natural and human disturbances. We combine what we call the homogeneous fire region zone, because that gives us information about the fire risk at different scale. And we wanted to use that really to be specific enough to have good information at the community level. And then we use information community database. So basically we use, of course, the type of energy that they're using, because 75% of this community are using diesel, but like some of them also doesn't use diesel. So we use that filter to not have this community in our analysis. And we also use the annual energy demand based on different data set. So, and then after that, we do some sort of spatial analysis to quantify the surrounding biomass that is at risk, at high risk of fire, and that can be used locally. So using biomass is really important, because, and also try to have a valuable biomass, because sometimes you have biomass, but you cannot access it because you have no roads. So again, that's the challenge. So we wanted to really use the biomass that we can access. And then after that, the last step of the analysis is to do some sort of conversion. We can easily convert biomass into energy, and to see how effectively this community can meet their annual energy need. So here, briefly, that's an information coming from two communities. So you have on the right side, you have Watson Lake in the southern Yukon, and you have Shamatawa in northern Manitoba. So these communities are very interesting because they are very different. So Watson Lake, you see that a lot of, that's the same scale actually, and you can see that we use a 10-kilometer buffer around each community. That way we're sure that we can access this biomass, like I said. So basically the white patch that you can see here on Watson Lake is what we call the biomass available for fuel treatment. So based on the analysis and the criteria that we use, we're able to spatialize all this information. And that's basically our biomass that we want to use locally. So for Watson Lake, a lot of biomass that is here. And as you can see, not much fire over the last 20 years. So that's an indication that means all this territory didn't burn recently. So because the territory didn't burn, that means we do have an accumulation of biomass in this landscape. Here in Shamatawa, very different, not much biomass available or accessible, a lot of fires. So the fire risk very different, lower actually, based on our criteria again. So, and we did this for the 53 communities, and to see the difference at the community level, but also regionally, let's say, for example, in Ontario or Northwest Territory and Yukon, because we know that regionally the fire risk is different from different places across Canada. So here another type of result, and again, this is just a screenshot of the 53 communities, but that will give you a better understanding on the kind of information that we extracted from the analysis. So here you have the community, you have their population. So as you can see, the population is relatively low. You have their annual energy demand. You have the biomass available from fuel treatment in oven dry tone. You have the biomass available within the 10-kilometer buffer that we can extract. You have the biomass density. So biomass density is also very important, because if you're in southern BC, you're going to have a different type of forest, where the vegetations grow faster because of the weather. If you go in the Arctic, that will be totally different. Like, for example, like Klavik. That's, it's not, even if you have forest or vegetation, it's not the same type of forest. So that's something we need to consider when we do that kind of analysis. And here you have, and this is very important information that we extracted from the analysis. We have the area that need to be treated annually. That's the in superficie. You have the biomass needed per year. And you have here the percentage of all this biomass that need to be harvested or collected to meet the annual energy demand of each community. So it's quite complex. So basically here, this 2.3% is basically we need to harvest 2.3% of this amount of biomass every year to supply their energy need and to get rid of the diesel and using bioenergy. So this is just the information for the raw biomass, but we also did different what we call sensitivity analysis, whether we use pellet or chips or just to also try to have what we call applied scenario as opposite to more theoretical scenario. So here, just we had this information just to see the trend, looking at the 50 plus community across Canada. So basically, in average, the area to be rated annually to meet the annual energy demand is 20 hectares. So this just gives you an information about, okay, is it really feasible? That's how we want to translate this information into operational scenario or more operational supply chain. So, and 20 hectares is actually a small amount of area to do the fuel treatment. Most communities can theoretically meet their annual energy demand by collecting less than 1% per year. The biomass identified at risk. So again, this is 1%. I think it's a very important information here because let's imagine that the information were 100%. So that would be not possible to harvest 100% of everything every year. And again, this could be translated into sustainability. That means basically every year by harvesting 1% of the biomass available, we don't touch 99% of the biomass. So that means we have enough biomass for sustainability condition. In terms of volume or amount of biomass, we're talking about 800 oven dry ton per year per community. So again, we did some estimation to see in terms of transportation, in terms of capacity. So basically, it's between 3 to 20 trucks per year, again, within a radius of 10 kilometers. And again, biomass can have many forms. So at this point, we don't know. It is just like just a rough estimation, but depending on the type of truck, depending on the type of biomass. Okay. And then another analysis that we did is because we were dealing with a lot of communities, obviously, with a lot of different profile, different region. So we did what we call a ranking analysis. And we did the ranking based on the amount of biomass, the current fire risk, but also the future fire risk, because like I said, fire risk is changing rapidly in the north. So we wanted to account for that. And also the field treatment area. So based on the analysis, based on the analysis on the criteria that we used, this is the result here. So the high priority communities are Watson Lake, as you can see, because a lot of this biomass is, close to the community. Fort Simpson also in the NWT. So this is the green dot, and another community in Quebec, Clova, that is in the south. But again, this is a very remote community. So this community, this analysis was really interesting to say, look, if you want to start this project and start to apply, how we should start. So this gives some direction to do that. I'm good with the time. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks. So the next step, and like I said, the first study that we did, very big picture national level. So it's really, even if the result and the information that we got from this study are like very interesting, doesn't help to move that at the community level. So the next step of this project, it's how we can do that at the community level. So here again, this is Watson Lake. Here you can see the biomass. And the things that we're doing actually currently, it's to something that we didn't do in a national study, is to assess, to quantify the impact on fire risk. Because on one side, we want to use biomass for bioenergy, but on the other side, we also want to make sure that we can reduce fuel accumulation in the landscape and we can reduce the fire risk. So that's what we're doing now. So how we do that, we use this software BNP3 to develop fuel treatment. So, but to do that, first, we need to recreate the fire history. We need to recreate this landscape in the software and to run fuel treatment. So the idea is really to evaluate the type of combustible, the type of fuel, the type of information that, drive the fire risk in this specific community. And then to analyze the opportunity to do fuel treatment. So we're doing this currently, like I said. The next things we want to do is to do what we call community-based supply chain, because the idea is really to get all the information that we can get from the community member, obviously, and they will develop the biomass supply chain. So the idea is really to use their input, to use also local knowledge about what's the best for the community in terms of bioenergy, in terms of fire reduction, and in terms of other land use and priorities in the landscape. Like I said in the introduction, we want to make sure that the bioenergy is fully integrated to other land use. So again, we have started to do that. And again, we don't start from scratch, because a lot of this community, they have what we call a CWPP, a Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So basically, they already do some mapping on where to localize fuel treatment or fire break. So here, this is the one from Watson Lake, and you can see in the south some fire break here. You can see some fuel management activities. So we are using this information to basically design the local supply chain. But we want also to use the information that we need. It's also use the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure inside the community, because it's really important to make sure that we use this information. So in that situation, Watson Lake, they have a local sawmill, for example. So we can use that to to develop the bioenergy system and make sure it's fit properly with the community needs. Next step, the third step, is really explore what we call a synergy and cost sharing opportunity with the bioenergy sector, but also develop jobs and opportunities. So in addition to looking at supply chain and fire reduction, we want to see how many jobs can be created within the community. So that's very, very important. To do that, we need to know what is happening inside the community, what kind of expertise, skill is existing. If there's no skill, then we can train people. So part of the program, part of the federal program, we also have a program looking at developing capacity, developing training and new expertise that will help to develop this biomass bioenergy solution. This is an example of capacity building. So we have this Combined and Heat Power Academy that is currently in BC, in Williams Lake. So this is a collaboration with FP Innovation, the NRCan and UBC, where we have these classes looking at, of course, forest ecology, forest management, sustainable forestry, but also more specific thing about supply chain, fire mitigation opportunity, and so on, looking also the impact of GHG mitigation. So I think we already gave 3 or 4 classes. I think the last one was in November. They have another one in December. And it's very this class is really was really developed for indigenous people. So the tuitions wait for indigenous participants. If some people interested in the audience, they can be in touch with me or contact UBC directly. I can send a link to the chat later on. So it's really a really interesting course. We also learn about the type of equipment that is needed. So it's really a very good start to know more about bioenergy and the link to sustainable forest management and bioenergy. And okay, so that's it for me. So take home message. So Forest Smart and bioenergy is really a win-win solution. This work, the work that's been published, I've been posted into the bioenergy, the World Bioenergy Association. I didn't talk about that, but this kind of approach is really interesting for different sustainable development goal, clean energy, socioeconomic development. So it's really an holistic approach. I think it's a very relevant practice to understand and to develop in the context of diesel or off-grid communities. Why? Because many benefits can improve forest management. A lot of this community, actually, probably most of this community, they're outside of what we call the forest management area. So forest is not managed in this place. But as soon as you develop local biomass supply chain, you have opportunity to do that and create also other opportunity for reducing cost relative to pellets, for example. So like I said, a lot of this community that are not currently using bioenergy, they're importing pellet, like basically pellet bags from very, very far away. So this is expensive too. Logistic is complex. So by using local supply chain, local biomass supply chain, you can improve a lot of and reduce this cost. One thing we didn't discuss, but it's also very critical. You have to involve a lot of people in this approach. Obviously, indigenous people, indigenous leadership is critical, but also we have to discuss with wildfire agency, bioenergy people, fuel management people. It's really important to map, all the stakeholders at the community level. The governance is really, really critical. It's still one of the challenge, one of the barriers. But if you have all the stakeholders at the table that understand all the benefits, then that's a good way to start. And again, so this presentation was a lot about off-grid and indigenous community, but it's not limited to this community. A lot of municipalities have to deal with fire. So even if they are connected to the grid, bioenergy or biomass is still could be still a co-product of fuel treatment. So we are working with community in southern BC now to discuss this very specifically. What can be done with all this biomass. We all know that the forest sector is facing many challenges now with the tariff, with other things. So bioenergy and bioeconomy in general could bring solutions. And again, there is a global demand for biomass. Canada doesn't use a lot of biomass nationally, but is in top 5 in terms of pellet export towards the EU market and Asia now. So again, that's something to consider. The synergy or the opportunity by managing fires and producing biomass. Creating a biomass supply chain I think is really relevant now for Canada. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have question, of course, I'd be happy to take a question now. But I have also a few links here about the project, the papers that have been published, and the data as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicolas, and we'll make sure those links are available. We have had quite a few questions coming in during the presentation, which was excellent. So thank you for that.
Good.
I have sorted the questions by upvotes, so I'm going to go kind of through them, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. We've got about 12, 13 minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good. So the first question is from Keisha. She says similar to Carrie's question, but I guess we'll get to Carrie's question. When you mention most communities only needing to harvest 1% of the at-risk biomass to meet energy needs, is it feasible to focus on debris or slash over the long term and avoid negative impacts to forest health, biodiversity, nature-based climate benefits by harvesting live trees? So she's just thinking of the criticisms of cutting old growth forest in BC for wood pellets, for example.
Yeah, good question. So again, like I said, sustainability is really important. So at this point, the idea obviously is to reduce the impact on the ecosystem, and we don't want to increase pressures on the ecosystem. So field treatments can have many forms, many type of, like I said, could be thinning, for example. So we don't want to create clear cut around the communities. We have, for example, we have situation of, so we have this project now, or where there's overlap with caribou habitat, for example. So that's something to consider. So that's why the second step the second objective of the next step is really to design the field treatment with the input of the communities, because we want to create that kind of conflict. And so it's really critical to take the time to make sure that we respect and we consider every needs and every priority in the landscape, not just fire reduction or not just bioenergy. But again, this 1%, I think when we realized that it was relatively low, we were kind of happy, because we know that kind of question will come. That's why I said, look, if we need to harvest 50% of everything that is at risk every year, that's not sustainable, obviously. But with 1%, we have a lot of room to manage and to design sustainable field treatment.
Thanks, Nicolas. The next question is from Nakita. She's asking, has this data been presented to these high-risk communities? And if yes, what have their initial reactions been?
Yes, so yeah, of course. So we were in touch with a couple of communities, and even before this project, I was working with communities, and that's something they really want to explore, because again, like many years ago, all the bioenergy, the focus on bioenergy was really GHG mitigation. Get rid of diesel and invest into clean energy. But based on the discussion, based on feedback from the community, we did a survey like 5 years ago about what were the key barriers and challenge of developing bioenergy into this community. And the answer was clear that fire mitigation is more important than bioenergy. And socioeconomic development was more important than GHG mitigation. So now we're changing the goals and the objective of this program, the federal program. So instead of really asking for GHG reduction, we ask about a more multidisciplinary approach about bioenergy, based on community needs and priorities.
Great, thanks, Nicolas. So you've answered, I believe you've answered Carrie's question in answering Keisha's. So I was going to go on to Josh's question. He says, thanks for the great presentation. Could you expand on what an effective funding model might be for how this diesel to fuel treatment biomass transition could be achieved?
Can you repeat that, please?
Could you expand on what an effective funding model might be for how this transition could be achieved in those communities?
Funding model, you mean the program, the federal program?
So I think he's just asking, yeah, so what kind of effective funding models exist, or what would you propose as a way to fund the transition for these communities? Is it coming from federal, from provincial? Like, where's the money coming from?
So, like I said in I think it's slide 7, we have two programs here at NRCan, Indigenous of Diesel Initiative and the Clean Energy for Rural and Remote Communities. It's called, and we have a BioEat stream for the bioenergy. And so this program basically provide funding to Indigenous community to explore bioenergy at large. I can send you the link. I can put you in touch with the people in charge. And so the goals were very diverse. Could be just capacity building. So basically, let's say that you are interested to develop bioenergies, and you can just look, okay, what kind of expertise do we have locally? What kind of infrastructure do we have? We can also provide funding for equipment. We can also provide money for feasibility study. So a feasibility study will tell you maybe do something similar if you want to use local biomass, what kind of biomass you have, and so on. Another stream is that I know that the Yukon and NWT, they have received federal funding for fuel treatment. It was announced over the last 2 years, a quite substantial amount of money, and now they're in the process of dispatching the money across the community. Then I invite you to contact directly, the Yukon government or the NWT for that. But yeah, I think there have also some provincial program as well.
Thanks, Nicolas. We've got 5 minutes left, so I'll try and rattle through a couple of more questions that we have.
Yeah.
Nicole has asked, she says, I see you identified forest as greater than 30 years old as hazardous or at risk of fire. Can you expand on why older forests are higher fire hazard, if that's what you were saying?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So she says, I see you identified forests greater than 30 years old as hazardous or at greater fire risk. I think what she's referring to is where there's a buildup of biomass around the communities. So there hasn't been a fire in that area for a certain amount of time. Can you expand on why those areas are at higher fire risk? Is it just basically a result of a buildup of biomass because there hasn't been fire?
Exactly. So this is something that we start to realize now in North America, and not just in Canada, in Northern community, because two reasons. For the South is like, we're pretty good at managing fire in terms of shutting down fires, fire protection. So this creates this change in some ways the natural cycle of fire. So we observe some buildup of vegetation in some situations. So we call that a surplus of biomass that create or that increase liability around some community. So that's why we have this accumulation of biomass. I didn't spend too much time on the analysis per se, but we have the whole methodology in the paper on how we define biomass at high risk of fire versus low risk. So again, I can share some information about that.
Thanks, Nicolas. And Nikita just had a follow-up to that question, which was, does biomass age affect how useful it is as bioenergy?
Biomass age?
Yeah, so like the age of the biomass that you're using, does that affect how useful it is as bioenergy at the plant? Like, do you get more bang for your buck from younger sapling?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What is important for bioenergy is what we call the moisture content, because we want to make sure that we use dry biomass, before to get into the boiler and the bioenergy system. So we have, again, I didn't talk about that, but we have different process for bioenergy, and storage and drying is really important. Again, boilers have like criteria to use biomass. So that's moisture is the most important one. So of course we don't want to have wet feedstock in the system, and so that's why we need to have storage units. And actually a lot of community, I know some of them, they're using post-fire biomass, because we know that this biomass is quite dry and can stay dry for many years after fire. So that's a different solution here, but some community are very good to harvesting burned wood.
Thanks, Nicolas. I think you answered Suzanne's question there as well. This is a question that you might have been expecting from the chat. I'm not sure who posted it, but they say, ironic that BC is exporting biomass, including old forest growth, to Drax power station in the UK. And they're just wondering if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, but this I think this is another debate, because that's a problem. Bioenergy creates a lot of discussion and a question about the sustainability of biomass. I know Drax closed one of their pellet facility, I think 2 weeks ago. I don't know the reasons for that. And I think what is happening in BC deserve more attentions, that's for sure. But again, I don't know exactly what's happening.
Thanks, Nicolas. We've just got a minute left, so we can just fit in one last quick question. So Jennifer asks, how do cultural or prescribed burns fit into this conversation?
Prescribed burn is one way to reduce fire risk, obviously, and I know we have a big push for that now, but I don't think that's part of again potential field treatment activities that could be part of this biomass supply chain. But when you do prescribed fire, obviously we don't get biomass. So specifically for bioenergy, that's something we don't consider really. But again, if the community wants to do prescribed burn, then they should do it for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicolas. So we have reached our time. I was wondering if there are a few other questions. Would you mind if we forward those on to you, and maybe we can just address those? You can address those later by email or something like that. We can maybe sort that out.
Sure.
But otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Nicolas, for the presentation today, and thank you everyone for joining and for your input in the chat and in the Q&A. We really appreciate it. And if you're joining on YouTube sometime in the future, thank you for doing that. And please click on some of our other videos. Thanks, Nicolas.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. Merci beaucoup.